fine. Okay. I guess I'll start. I like the book. I'm not like in love with it yet. Like for this first 75 pages, I'm taking my notes. I'm finding a couple things that I like. I really like the story on a little bit towards the end of the 75 pages about like perfectionism and how the guy was cleaning the garden and he realized like it's too perfect, so he like shook the tree and let the stuff fall, and that's how the whole wabi sabi, I think it's called, um, which is like finding the beauty in the imperfection or something like that. That's how that kind of tradition started. So I like those kind of little things. I like that each, chapter or like each subheading or whatever is like a little story on its own and it's telling me the story of somebody else. So because I like books like that. But I guess in terms of like the overall message, it sounds bad, but like we've heard it a million times. I will say this, which again, I've heard this a million times. I've told myself this a million times. I just haven't done it. But even in the beginning, when they were talking about, oh, when she found her superpower, I'm like, well, dang, what is her superpower, right? Right. So I'm like reading it, and then it's basically their ability to learn multiple languages. I forgot the girl's name, but I think the guy's name was like Benny or Belly, and they were like just learning languages left and right. And the best way to do it was to just do it and like just speak it, right? And how long we've had this book club? Like 7 years. And how long have I been saying I want to learn Portuguese? Like 7 years, right? Like 7 years. So when I'm reading this, I'm like, because in my mind I thought the same thing the book said, like, oh, we've passed the age of like where your mind absorbs this kind of information and where you learn it faster, blah blah blah. Like I'm past that age. I'm never gonna get Portuguese. And then to hear this woman in her mid 20s, mid to late 20s say like, oh, well, I learned 6 7 languages. Arlene, I did Duolingo for like 3 years and I was still talking about apples and monkeys. I never got past apples and monkeys. I'm like, 2 years, I'm gonna quit this streak. It was more about like keeping the streak than learning, I guess. But um I did highlight a couple things. One of my favorite things that I highlighted was it's easy for people to be critics or cheerleaders. It's harder to get them to be coaches. A critic sees your weakness and attacks your worst self. A cheerleader sees your strength and it celebrates your best self. A coach sees your potential and helps you become a better version of yourself. Um, which I like that because I guess he noticed that when he was doing his whole public speaking, he was telling people like, "Give me your feedback," and then he realized that the feedback was like silly stuff, like, "Why are you breathing like Darth Vader?" and like, "Stop making jokes that aren't landing," and like just kind of being a little bit mean, and were showing him what he did wrong in the topic or in the class that he gave. And then when he switched it and was like, "What's your advice? Like, what can I do better?" He switched the narrative to improve the next one, which I like the concept of that one. Um, Let me see what else I have here. I did like the I guess what put it into perspective. They were talking about like pilots, right? Like, oh, if you most pilots or people aren't afraid of flying, they're afraid of stalling. And then they tell you why planes stall and how they prepare for them, right? So they say that you either you get put in a simulator and it simulates a stalling, and then they like actually randomly stall it for you when you're up there like practicing because and then I highlighted this one. You can't be ready for anything if you haven't trained for everything. To get to hardwire their brain to just like, hey, this is how it'll happen. This is how you'll feel. Or going for it, and they don't even tell them. They just stall the plane. They're like, oh, poop, we're going down, and you have to like figure it out in the middle of your training. So, um, I really did like that. So far, I'm not saying I don't like the book. I'm saying like on a scale of 1 to 5, I would say like a 3.7. Like it's tipping towards I like it, but I'm not like 5. Let's get it. I want to keep reading. So yeah, that's my takeaways.
I'll jump. Um, I'm fascinated and trying to get my magnetic bookmark stuck on the pages there. Um, I really, I'm not big for prologues. I kind of look at prologues as blah, 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 kind of almost sort of a literary grandstanding. Um, but I really enjoyed this prologue because when he started out talking about, the whole study that they did, with the kindergartners and the whole class structure that was to me very fascinating. Because it's not just about these little kids, and it takes you back and go, can I remember kindergarten? I mean, I do remember getting dropped off at the first day and, the whole thing and seeing the pictures and then connecting those dots together in my own mind. I don't know, I got the picture here somewhere. But what I saw was a progression. If you start from the prologue and you go to the 75th page, and if you just put it in that timeline, you go through the initial studies, and there's a few studies in there. And then you hit chapter 1, which were creatures of discomfort, and he outlines that. But a very interesting thing happens when you get to um, page 75-ish. You get through the human sponges, but you get to which I see the arc. And I see the arc maybe because I see the arc in my own life. And it sort of I have it highlighted on page 75 where he talks about beating yourself up doesn't make you stronger. My hands are cold, so I'm warming my fingers up here. It's middle of summer and we're still getting fog in the morning, so it's that Carmel, Monterey type of fog in the morning and pleasant in the afternoon. But anyway, it says, and it leaves you bruised. Being kind to yourself isn't about ignoring your weaknesses. It's about giving yourself permission to learn from your disappointments. We grow by embracing our shortcomings, not by punishing them. Make it feel wrong. So anyway, then he goes on to the whole thing about perfectionists often worry that failing even once will make them a failure. And I remember being in the consumer banking industry a long time ago. And the big thing was you never want to make a mistake. You don't want to make a mistake as a lender. And when you're on the operations side, you don't want to make a mistake on the operations side because you will forever have, pardon the metaphor, um, an arrow from a career standpoint stuck through you. And you'll go from one, there was always this, you have to be perfect. Your shop has to be perfect. Your auditors have to understand in every area that you go, you have a name for yourself. Well, that's all fine and good, I suppose. But it becomes an ingrained mindset that I think actually stayed with me for a long time. I mean, I really had to grow out of them or that whole process because it really hit me. And it's in that one sentence on page 75 because he defines it. And he says, it's called the overblown implications effect. If you cook one bad dish, yeah, maybe this group may not, to me, might be a bad dish. And you're thinking, well, you didn't do too bad, Ron. But the point of the matter is, if it's, a $500,000 loss or a $30 million loss, that is a big problem. So there's a difference between cooking a bad dish and a huge fiduciary error that goes on, or a mistake, or some lack of guidance leads you to some level of decision making. So, but I see that all in a timeline that goes back to his whole part about having a really great kindergartner teach. If they can actually begin to help the child understand and build a level of character, that level of character can change. It's not about, oh, I'm a good person because I save every nickel, or I'm a really good person because I donated 20 cans of Campbell's soup to the food bank. Yeah, those are great things. And those show pieces of character, but there's a character about yourself that I really think the author is trying to dig in on for us, and especially most of us, I would assume here are running businesses, that you can look at things in these very finite aspects. But if you go back and you can uncover in the haystack of our lives, you can actually, without the risk of being philosophical here, you can actually pick out those data points and you can actually see those character inflection points. And if you can string them together in that arc of your life, you can see that level of character that's being built, that when there are changes and when there are business changes or when there are business failures, you have essentially that muscle already built and you just have to activate it. You have to look at it and be able to separate it and say, what is so different than what happened when I was in junior high school? Or if I was, in my case, a Boy Scout back in 1896. What makes that situation, in 30 days going all the way from San Francisco on a Greyhound bus to Fairbanks, Alaska, up through the Yukon Territory, on the old Alcan highway, going on the rough gravel road in a Greyhound bus, with nothing outside, um, and camping out, and then a flock of bears come, and what are you going to do now? So it's an arc, and I think that that's where this book is really heading. Talking about what are the bricks, and how have we laid the bricks of our really deeper internal character, not as being a good person, but about what are those bricks and what do they look like and how do they all connect and what creates the foundation so that you can create additional foundations on top of that that create a level or the desired success that you want, long and short.
Just unlocked new fear in me when you said a flock of bears. Like that. That sounds terrifying.
It was in
Never
the
had any of them
Yukon.
up here, but yeah.
No, it was right on the border of the Yukon Territory in Alaska. It was by Jackson or wherever it was, but it was pretty amazing. They all went away. They came and sniffed us, and then they all went on their way.
Very cool. Well, I'll pick up where you left off there as you kind of talk about it. The one visual in this one that is on that page 68, the perfectionism spiral. That one to me, what like put perfectionism, defined it so simply, where it's like, yeah, when you see it, when it's huge, it's like, yeah, you're going to try something new, but then you make the mistake and then I'll never do that again. And so your comfort zone gets smaller. And then it just like, you hear that, but then seeing it visually, and then you get to the very bottom and the end of the spiral and says, now you're stuck. And it's, how do you get out of that? And so I love the stories that's talking about the architect and how he embraces not being a perfectionist, but looking for perfectly acceptable. And it doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be perfectly acceptable. And so just as a mindset, because there's a lot of that I've related to through the years where it's like, I was just trying to get that little bit better and it delays and it creates procrastination. And then it just keeps you get that smaller and smaller and smaller space to play in because you don't want to go back out there and make mistakes. And just the encouragement of how this book is all tying together. And I've thoroughly been enjoying this one. Like, again, the last one wasn't bad, but this is a very refreshing book to come out of from what we just finished up. And just how all the different stories are tying together. I am thoroughly enjoying this one here. And he talked about, as you alluded to a little bit, Lola, earlier with the language and learning those. And it's okay to make mistakes. And what the one guy asked for is like, I'd like to eat your underpants or whatever he said in the language, not correctly at all. And she's like, whoa, okay, yeah, I can see how that, like, without knowing it, but it's okay to make the mistakes because they will immediately correct you and you're never going to ask in a foreign language again, I would like to eat your underpants when you really want some soup. Like, whatever it is, like, I was cracking up with some of his stories. I think I love how he's giving these analogies and then a real life story and just how it's just it is cementing some of the different lessons he's trying to get across on it here. And, the pursuit of constantly getting better and growing, as he used the stories of the two javelin throwers in Africa and the one guy who's naturally gifted, and, he had all the natural skills, but he did not continue to strive and try and get better. And the gentleman who did, who was smaller, like if on the surface, if you're looking at him, there's no way this guy's going to be a great javelin thrower. On his worst mistake, he outthrew and one of the few people who's ever thrown for over 100 meters in this thing, and it ended up winning him gold. And then, being able to go all the way to the Olympics and win a silver medal, only because when they showed that graph of him, he kept progressing where everybody else either peaked and got worse, or just their progression slowed tremendously, because this guy was constantly willing to learn and adapt from the mistakes that he had made. I never knew about sea sponges and their, dynamic nature and what they have to do in our everyday life. Like how, let's go back to 100 million years ago or whatever that was. And just some of the different things in there. Another line that I really enjoyed was when they were talking about that Melody Hobson and, her rise to success as the co-CEO of Starbucks. But as we become more sponge-like, we become better equipped to achieve greater things. And to paraphrase, you get a lot farther by being a self-starter. And I think that is a great little nugget and takeaway from here of just like, don't wait for somebody else to come help you. Don't wait for somebody else to come lift you up. Don't wait for a little more instruction or that perfectionism to kick in. Just do. Like, right, Nike, just do it. And it's okay to just be that self-starter, keep moving forward. And then the one other line that I really liked, because it's as they talk about, you've heard that, is it better to work smarter or to work harder? You can only pick one. And this always is validated. And this is on page 44. Growth is less about how hard you work than how well you learn. And I thought that kind of puts a seal on, which one's better, to work smarter or work harder. Learn, work hard to learn is how I would put that one. But the learning is the most important part, because that's where you're going to continue to grow. And so, no, overall, I mean, so many different, the story of the chess kids at the beginning and how, they overcome, again, from a different starting point, all the disadvantages that these other schools had, but how they came together as a team. Like, I'm really looking forward to seeing what other stories and random things is he going to tie to help drive home these lessons from this book, whether it's a sea sponge, a chess team, a javelin thrower, a concrete builder, and like, doesn't matter. He's all over the place and it all ties together. And yeah, I'm very much enjoying how this one is starting off. So kudos to whoever suggested this one.
All right, I'll jump in. Great lessons here. I love that it starts and immediately when you think of potential, you think of like a skill set, like what skill set do I have that is going to lead to like my potential to be, good at something or to excel somewhere in my life. But really, this book isn't about necessarily having more of that talent. It's about building the different habits, right? Getting uncomfortable, being uncomfortable, being uncomfortable. Continually learning, being curious, absorbing that knowledge versus just being, not willing to learn, like Chris just said, and then kind of trading that perfection for progress. And I think my favorite chapter so far has been about being the imperfectionist, and that, like, I was reading some of the things and I just started thinking immediately about my own life and where I'm at with my career and how I got there. And I think being an entrepreneur at the young age of 19, from the very beginning, you're making mistakes left and right because you don't know anything, right? You don't have any basis of, oh, this is the way this should be done. So you're actually having to learn very early through your mistakes. And so I think when you learn that from that early age, there's no such thing as being a perfectionist, because then you just say, well, I learned that. Maybe I'm not going to do that again. Or, hey, this helped me learn a better way of doing it, so I'm going to implement that and I'm going to keep going. And I think it's funny how many times when I tell people, oh, yes, I'm an event planner, I'm an event coordinator, immediately I get the comment, oh, you must be a perfectionist. And I laugh because I am far from it. The difference is I like excellence, I don't need perfectionism. That never has a place in any of my events or anything that I do or any of my businesses. I strive for excellence, not perfectionism. And I think, and I've seen where, whether it's somebody that's worked for me or people who are working with me, when they strive for excellence, they're afraid of making those mistakes, which I have seen how mistakes lead to some amazing events or things like that, right? It's about keeping the flow going. And if you're afraid of making mistakes, then the flow stops. So for me, when I was reading this, I was just like, yeah, I think it's a blessing for myself in my life that I've had to make mistakes from the very get-go and I've had to learn through them, that I never got stuck in this like perfectionism cycle like it showed in the graphic there. But yeah, I'm really enjoying all the examples of this book and kind of the real life to the concept, real life to the concept. Um, yeah, I'm looking forward to the rest of these chapters.
I'd like to go next. And I think it's interesting because I'm finding this book has got some really good nuggets for me, but a lot of it I'm just finding very bloated. I'm finding a lot of the examples that just goes on and on and on. And I guess some of the takeaways that I'm finding is that okay, it's been interesting learning about kids and if they had a really good teacher when they were younger, how it impacted them. Um, what I find though is we hear that, but what can really be done to change that kind of thing? So I find it kind of leaves me feeling a little bit empty on that front. There's Melody, who's the CEO of an investment firm, and she's capable and she's hard driven and she's always been that way. And it was really because she met someone that found her to be a real sponge, able to be coached and ask lots and lots of questions. But for me, it still kind of falls short as to like really, but what did she do? Like the quote, working hard and asking questions. Like to me, I need more context of how she really got to where she was. So those little things are where for me the book keeps falling, and I just find it's just not meeting my needs. To share some things that I am relating to is there's really is barely a paragraph, and it talks about brain plasticity or neuroplasticity. And what that is basically something that I very personally had have gone through. The less than 3 years ago, I had a double knee replacement, and because of that surgery, I had 2 strokes, and that's because something when they're in there slicing and dicing, something from my knees went up to my brain. And so I had all of the typical symptoms of a stroke. But the biggest one is that I had paralysis in my left hand. So I couldn't open it, couldn't close it. It just wasn't functioning. And that, of course, was very scary, not knowing if I was going to get that back. And the professionals also didn't know if I would be able to get that back. But one thing we talked about is the brain's neuroplasticity. And what that means is that the brain has the capacity to find new pathways to do things. And something that was explained to me is, say that you've got a bridge and you've got a crash on the bridge. What's going to happen is that all of the cars that are near that zone, because you're on a bridge, the cars that are behind the crash, they have nowhere to go. They can't get off the bridge. They can't go down a side street. They can't do anything. But the cars that get farther and farther away and maybe just on the on-ramp to the bridge, they can possibly go this way or that way. They can get off the bridge and they can find new ways to get to their end destination. And so for me, what I'm relating to in the book is just the fact that wherever we're at, whatever our current skills, knowledge, and experience is at, there are different pathways that we can take. And our brains have the capacity to do that, which is so amazing. So I'm finding that's one thing that, of course, being very personal, I was able to relate to. I find he talks about um, language and trying to pick up languages, and I haven't traveled to a lot, and I haven't traveled to a lot of countries that don't speak English. So I find that once again he talks about, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed, and oh, and for me it's just a little too much. Like, okay, you try, you make a mistake, it's not that big a deal. So overall, I'm finding, yeah, some interesting things. Very interesting about the sponges. Yeah, wouldn't have known that they were so old and all of the things that they can do. But like I say, for me, it's just kind of missing the mark. I'm finding, yeah, a few really good nuggets, but I really find there's just a lot of extra stuff that just isn't resonating with me. So we'll keep reading though and see what else we can find.
Okay, I can go next. Thanks, Rhonda. I just I gotta look in there. Okay, so Rhonda, I love this book. Do you know what I'm loving? I'm loving just trying to be a better person, and this hit the mark for me. So three things stood out for me. Ambition is the outcome you want to attain. Aspiration is the person you hope to become. I think that that was amazing. And it said we cling to our narrow comfort zones and miss out on a broader possibilities. I think comfort zone is the hugest thing. I think especially when you get older. For me, I like things a certain way, and to hop out of that comfort zone, I'm going to miss out on things. And so that's a huge thing to keep being reminded about. And then I love the quote. It said, "Personality is your predisposition. Character is the capacity to prioritize your value over your instincts." Okay, this hit home for me. And I was like, you know what? You can have a personality all day long, but man, your character is what really proves who you are. And if you could actually prioritize your value over instinctively, like, you know, someone rocked your boat a little bit and instinctively you want to do something, but your character overrides it and you prioritize the value you value in somebody else. I think that's pretty amazing. So I love that. And the last one was the best way to accelerate growth is to embrace, seek, and amplify discomfort. Again, that word discomfort. I uh I think I that's scary for me to be out of my comfort zone. And yes, I have done amazing hikes and stuff, but I always know that there's an end. I think the hardest thing for discomfort to me is to try to do something. And I love what we heard about that little pinwheel thing is to fail. And so I am excited to fail without anybody judging me. Okay, that's it.
I don't know if you guys know who Eileen Gu is. She's a Chinese American freestyle skier, and she's gotten like several medals in the Olympics and everything. But every time you guys talk about the perfectionism and all this stuff, and even like the messing up and just keep going, it reminds me of her. Because if you watch any interview of hers, somebody even asked her, "Hey, winning these two silver medals, do you feel like you lost two golds and you gained two silvers?" She's like, "I'm the most decorated freestyle skier. Like winning an Olympic medal is a big like goal, and winning five is even bigger. So me getting two silver medals is more than good enough." Like just her mentality around that. And then she, in different interviews, she even attributed that to somewhere in the book, in the language part, Rhonda, they were talking about like how kids learn languages quickly because they don't care. They could be asking for whatever, and they're just saying as long as they learn one or two words, they're gonna be saying gibberish to you, and they don't care. They don't have the embarrassment, that whole like, oh, I said it wrong. They don't care, and then they know mom and dad are gonna correct them. Um, and she basically kind of says the same thing, like, what I do is I just go in there, I show up for myself. I can't tell you, you can tell that I'm not faking it because I showed up for myself every single day as an athlete. I can go and say I read all these millions of books and stuff, but as an athlete, I can't lie to you as an athlete because you can see all the progress I've made throughout my athletic years by me being here in these Olympics. So when that whole chapter with the whole perfectionism or whatever, she literally was like, I'm here at the Olympics. I've given it my all my whole life. And whether I get a silver, a bronze, or whatever, it's good enough for me because I have given it my all up until this point. So as Ron and Chris were talking, like her name kept popping into my mind, just all the interviews I've been seeing of her lately, and the good mentality she has around it. But I love what you said right now, Shannon. Like, oh, I can't wait to fail without people like judging me, because there was a part in there again with the kids. Somebody, to Chris's point, somebody asked for like a newspaper fruit or something like that in the book, and they were like, kids love newspaper fruit. And it was just like a little joke on they don't care that it's wrong. They just love it and they're gonna go for it. So I love that you said that. I don't know if Jay or Aline or anybody else wants to say anything else.
I can go next. Are you ready? Oh my god. I only read to page 45 and then I was trying to take notes from what everybody else said. So yeah, everybody's awesome. Thanks for that refreshing review. I kind of liked how it just started with everyone has potential, right? Because often we just beat ourselves up all the time, but it's true. And the line that said, this book is how to unlock it all. And I'm like, I'm going to read this book, right? This book is awesome. I kind of feel the same way as you, Shannon, I think, and it's really interesting how Rhonda, it's like one of the other books, we're very different. But that's the beautiful thing about the book club, right? But it's like, wow, how could she not like it? Wow, we're really different mindsets, right? But like, whatever, there's no judgment. It's just interesting how we're so different, how we learn. Speaking of the learning part, I totally resonate with the kindergarten teacher, because even to this day, 55 this year, like, I remember the teacher from kindergarten. Like, she was so kind and stuff, and like, so anyway, so, that part where it talks about, you know, a lot of successful people, they show up with more initial knowledge or a head start with some sort of parental support. So all the factoids that were comments about the kindergarten teachers actually helping with the income and all that other stuff later. Was like, that was kind of mind-blowing actually, how they could track that. And I also liked how it said the people who make major strides are freaks of nurture, right? I feel that's really true. And that's, as a parent, Shannon's laughing, as a grandma, but it's like, as a parent, like, we have to really do that nurturing. If you don't get it, there's basically, you go through a lot of your adult life through recovery. Anyway, and then the next part was the Raging Rooks. I love that, because what was that movie with the girl who played chess? Queen's Gambit? I love that movie. Right? Shanna's going, yeah, I love that. So it was all about adaptation. I love how that teacher, thanks Lola, the teacher taught backwards in the beginning. And I thought, that's so how I learned. Like, it's so, like, if you give me a manual for how to learn chess, I will never read it. But if you show me, I'm like a visual learner like that. Then this chapter about the languages, that was really funny. So Rhonda's like, what do you mean? How could it be embarrassing? It's like, I lived in Spain for 5 years. And if you guys know anything about the word polla and pollo, there's a big difference. So I'll let you guys look that up. But I was in a tapas restaurant and I was trying to practice my Spanish. Lola knows the difference, right? So I was like, you know, trying to ask, like, is that pollo? Because I'm like, it's a 50-50, right? And of course, the guy was laughing his ass off. And he goes, yeah, right? Polla. Do you want to tell him what it is, Lola? Okay. It's basically the male body part. Okay, so then the section about, it's either chicken or the male body part, is what I was asking. For the tapas, I'm like, polla? And he goes, yeah. Anyway, that's me just doing it. Then the human sponges part I thought that was really neat. Kind of like, you know, it really is amazing how alive they are, but they look so kind of like nothing. But I thought there was a part in the sponge bit where it was like, it just resonated for me. Like, I need to be a better sponge, because I'm like that girl where I'm so curious that I'm asking 2 million questions. And I kind of thought, I need to be a better sponge. Like, just basically be quiet and sit still, right? Let me see. And just absorb the information. Javelin throwers thing was really inspiring. Like, yeah, that was inspiring. Blah, blah, blah. The character part was huge. And I feel like we don't have that taught in school. You know, like actually teaching character for our kids. So I liked how it said it's a learned capacity to live by your principles. So Shannon kind of sort of summarized that part up. Chris talked about the perfectionism spiral. Didn't get to that page. But it kind of triggered my mind of like Ron Howard. So Ron Howard, he said something, a quote, which was, if if my movies, the projects that I do, if they get to at least 60% of what I thought they would be, like don't quote me on the exact percentage, but it was, you'd think that someone like him would expect it like 90% or higher, but it was really low. And if it sort of comes out to what I think it would, then it's a successful film. And I thought, oh, that's interesting, because he obviously has to adapt to all the different factors of everything. The other thing that I thought was interesting, page I didn't get to, was there the section you said, Chris, about just do it? Right? And
It was just the taking action and being a self-starter.
oh, okay. Because I get triggered by that motto, just do it, you know, the Nike thing. Because it's really, when you're doing narcissist recovery, it's what their motto is. So it's like, just as long as you're doing it with empathy and kindness, then just do it, right? Let's see, entrepreneurs. I'm a daughter of an entrepreneur. I learned by doing, kind of like Krista. I used to strive for excellence, but now I'm kind of just striving for just doing it. Because I have analysis paralysis oftentimes. Let me see, last thing. The last takeaway I had was the scaffolding way of learning. And because like I said, I didn't get that far in the book, but the offer of initial instruction in the way that my mind is, as a visual learner, I guess, and the other thing for me is I went to 3 elementaries and 3 high schools, so I never had consistent learning. So imagine if you did that, and then you got to make new friends, you moved to a new house, and blah, blah, blah. So my learning is just so scattered. But the best thing about this book was it was talking about adaptability. And so when you change that much, and I've changed in my occupation, I'm actually pretty good at adapting to things. So it may not be the most methodical method of working and functioning in the world, but maybe that's probably why I'm ADHD, is all that shifting and stuff. But that's my takeaway for this week.
How can I follow that, right? I mean, woof, all right. Got more energy than all of us. No, but I agree with a lot of things that you said. And I feel like it's like everybody took little pieces and notes that I have, like, Shannon, I think that you and I were reading this together, because a lot of things that you said were actually what I underlined in most of the parts. But really what I want to know is, like, I want to go back and find out if I was part of the kindergarten teachers that were the best or the ones with least knowledge. I'm not sure which group I was part of, but I really want to find out, because I have some feedback for them, as to what they could do better, I guess, later on. So Ron, you had said the exact same thing I wanted to say before about prologues. I don't usually read them. Depending on how long the book looks is how I'll decide if I want to read the prologue. And so this time when I went through it, I really thought that this was one of the best ones that, well, I can't really say that the best ones I've ever read, because, like I said, I don't really read them, but it was a good one. And so, Shannon, I think you mentioned it also, but I love how they say in here, this book is not about ambition, it's about aspiration. And it says the aspiration is the person you hope to become. The question is, it says ambition is the outcome you want to attain. Aspiration is the person you hope to become. The question is how much money, the question is not how much money you earn, how fancy titles you land, or how many awards you accumulate. Those status symbols are poor proxies for progress. What counts is not how hard you work, but how much you grow. So I think that was like the first thing that stuck out to me, and I set the precedence for the rest of the book. So I thought that was a really great way for them to start. And then I went through basically with the way that I like how he writes examples and then tells you how to relate to it, right? So it like paints a picture for me. And I really like how he went through the scaffolding and how that was to support, and they build it up and then they take it down, so that you can start to think on your own. You can start to come up with your own ways of doing things. And I love how they did this chess thing. I've never played chess. I don't know how to play chess. I play it like checkers, which is obviously not how you play it, but and only when I don't have a checkerboard in front of me. And so I think it's kind of great how, like what you said, Arlene, how they taught them backwards. I thought that was a really unique way to look at it. So I think that people who learn from different ways of doing things can really benefit from that. And obviously they did, because they went on to win several championships following that, and went on to these crazy, awesome jobs, like basically going out way outside of what they thought they would ever become. So I love that. And then they were talking about, and kind of going off of that, they said that they were talking about how once Maurice left the school, that the other coach that had come in had also now run them to a victory, I think in 3rd place or something like that. And so they're talking about how you can create and mold these leaders based off of just thinking about their characteristics and thinking about the things that they provide. And so they say, when we admire great thinkers, doers, and leaders, we often focus narrowly on their performance. That leads us to elevate the people who have accomplished the most and overlook the ones who have achieved the most with the least. The true measure of your potential is not the height of the peak you've reached, but how far you've climbed to get there. So again, it's talking about not how, just about what you have gone through to get there. So I think I like how he's setting it up for the rest of the book. And then the other part that I really liked was talking about, what chapter is this one? He's talking about, Steve Martin and how he bombed on stage all the time and everything like that. I thought that was hilarious because I think Steve Martin's really funny. So I don't know when he used to bomb like that, but it says the lesson is not that everyone who hates writing should do it anyway. It's that if we avoid the discomfort of learning techniques that don't come easily to us, we limit our growth. In the words of our great philosophers, Ted Lasso, if you're comfortable, you're doing it wrong. That was discovered that launched our Bliggers into language learnings. So again, I guess I feel like then I must be doing it right because I usually feel like I'm doing it wrong. So I feel good about that. Right. And then the language part was the last part that I really, everybody kind of touched upon it. So I won't say much, but it's kind of frustrating. I took like 4 years of Spanish and I was married to a Latino for like, so that spoke, it was ESL, like, right. So like it was mostly his first language. So I should have known a little bit of Spanish. I could speak like 4 sentences. So, and I think it's just because to the point, like, I'm not like those kids who I don't want to get embarrassed and say the wrong things. I don't want to go ask somebody for what Arlene asked for, as opposed to, what it should have been. So I just think it's kind of funny with the way that people learn. And I have avoided learning more languages, or even Spanish is more languages, another language, is because I just put it in my mind that I'm past the point of being able to do it. And so their thought process, I'm just doing it, is something that maybe I'll try a little bit more, but I'll learn Spanish when Jay learns Spanish, so we can both, have speak it together. So I'll feel better about that. But overall, I do like how I like how they write things when they do it in small little areas that are contained into different examples of different things. So I like how this is written so far. I think he's pretty good. So I actually like this book. So I'm excited to see where it goes.
I would just have a general takeaway just in the macro sense of I think this is a great book from this standpoint, not the book itself, but just how diverse this book club discussion today has been, with so many people getting so many different takeaways out of this book. That's where I was like, that's how I would judge this as a good book, is so many different takeaways from so many different areas, so many different reminders. And like, nobody's even mentioned the diving part yet. And I forgot about that part of it, and just the perfection in there and just his coach. Anyways, no, kudos to everybody for this one. I think it's a great one just from that sense, just how engaging and diverse this conversation has been today.
Very true.
It's chicken or penis. It just, like which, like that's,
Oh
I
my
guess those are
God.
the choices.
That's hilarious.
I really hope Jay right now, as he says he's quote unquote listening to this in another meeting, he just really zeroed in on chicken or penis. You hear that, Jay? Chicken or penis. That's what happens when you order food in other countries. It's either the chicken or the penis.
That's hilarious. You guys are so funny. All right, great meeting today, guys. We'll see you guys next week for the next part. I guess 75 to what? 125? 150?
150.
150. All right, 75 to 150.
It seems, sorry guys, it seems that this is becoming an R-rated book club. I'm not sure.
Just for today.
Are we gonna read?
Jay, you have to listen back, Jay.
So,
Are we gonna start reading 50 Shades of Grey next,
Oh,
or
yeah.
what?
Ooh.
YouTube's gonna block us.
Literally.
and it's lying out as a perfect book, because quite literally 150 is the end of a chapter. So there you go.
Okay.
It was written for us. It was perfect. So yeah, there you go. Awesome.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. Bye, Cindy. Thank you for joining us.
Have a beautiful week. Bye-bye.
Bye.